As a black person living in the United States of America in the 21st century, it can be difficult to understand the importance that land has to certain communities of people. My ancestors, the descendants of the enslaved Africans in North America, survived by placing a premium on their bodies rather than any set piece of land. This marks a distinct difference between the struggle of my ancestors and that of the Cherokees. However, it is through an examination of this difference in which I can fully step into the narrative of the Trail of Tears. For the Cherokee, as with many other indigenous nations in the Americas, their lives and their land were intertwined. In 1771, when our book begins, the Cherokee claimed territory in what would in time become the states of Virginia, Kentucky, North Carolina, Tennessee, South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, and Mississippi. Just as my perception of land is rooted in the culture and history of the people that I descend from, so too was the Cherokee perception of land rooted in the history of their culture and their people. This perception of land was vastly different than the European perception of land, which predominantly littered American thought. Put simply, the Cherokees believed in owning the land collectively or communally, and the European immigrants and the eventual American settlers believed in owning this land individually. This would often lead to contracts in which Cherokees were coerced to sell land over to a colonist or settler, or if they weren't coerced to sell land over to a colonist or settler, they were selling this land to this colonist or settler with a different understanding or a different perception of what that contract or what that selling of land meant. The same thing would be true when treaties would be signed between Indigenous Nations, specifically the Cherokees in this case, and whether it be Spain, France, Britain, or eventually the United States of America, where they would be using the same language in these treaties, but they would be meaning totally different things to these opposite sides involved in the treaties, which would lead to these treaties being violated by one side or by both sides eventually, because it was a treaty or a contract that was not negotiated with an equal understanding. The Cherokee has something called a blood law, which essentially was the use of capital punishment as a consequence for specific violations within the community or within the nation as a whole. And the selling of land and the signing of treaties in which land was ceded over was considered to be a blood law, something that you would be killed for. And that's something that becomes very important in the later pages of the book, but it's also something that very much informs you just how serious the Cherokees viewed their land and just how the type of relationship, rather, I would say, that they had with their land. So it happens that the genesis of the black struggle in the United States of America is one of freeing bodies, and the genesis of the Cherokee struggle in the United States of America is one of protecting land.